The views and opinions expressed on Unlock Your Wealth Radio are those of the host, guests, and callers only and are not necessarily the views of Unlock Your Wealth Radio, Heather Wagenhals, or Success Publishing International.
More willpower than a barefoot woman at a shoe sale. Able to stretch a single paycheck for an entire month. Makes money concepts easier than third grade math. Introducing your purveyor of prosperity, Heather Wagenhals.
Work all day, stress all night. Take your mind off your money and focus on your life. Money don't matter or the stuff it bought. It's the way you think, not what you've got.
Yeah, Unlock Your Wealth Radio starts now. Get your money mind right.
I missed that.
Yes, we are experiencing old timers here at Unlock Your Wealth Radio. This segment is sponsored in part by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at unlockyourwealthradio.com/free book and click on the link to over 150,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Welcome to the old timers version of Unlock Your Wealth Radio. Wait a minute. We're starting a new season. It is now the season of seasoned citizens.
Not the season of the witch, that's for sure. It's the season of Alzheimer's, yeah.
Regardless of what season it is, welcome to Unlock Your Wealth Radio. I am your purveyor of prosperity, Heather Wagenhals, flanked by the maestro of Moolah, Michael Terry.
Hey, folks.
And by the old timer, Michael Terry.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
And we will help you get your money mind right on today's show with the following great features. So first off, new season, starting over with the keys to riches. Our key is
acceptance and affirmation.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I thought that it was like a lobotomy getting that out of you this morning. And then we have a cool guest from the Tax Revolution Institute, one of my new found friends from the Freedom Fest. That's a lot of F's there.
Wasn't he, didn't he play one of the characters in Miami Vice?
That was Dawn Johnson. This is Dan Johnson. Got a different vowel there. You were having trouble with the A's this morning. You couldn't get acceptance. You're like, acknowledgement. But no, what? Yes, so Dan Johnson from the Tax Revolution Institute will be joining us. And we have Moolah Word of the Day.
Cool.
So we got lots of good stuff.
Off to a good season.
Yes. So starting it off well. So brand new season, brand new key, brand new guests, all brand spanking new. We're going to close out this year with a grand slam.
Cool.
What do you say? So it's the season of savings is technically what it is because, you know, we've got Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Chow Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and and Festivus from Seinfeld.
Festivus. You got all the Seinfeld holidays.
The holiday for the rest of us. So so we have all sorts of things going on.
Festivus for the rest of us.
It could be the season of spending, but we're going to make it a season of savings. So we're going to have a lot of fun this season. Cool. With a lot of different things that we could do when it comes to managing your money effectively and surviving the holidays. Not only just surviving the holidays, but we're going to give you the tools to thrive through the holidays.
Have a great time.
Yes. So thanks so much for stopping by. So the Keys to Riches is now its own show. If it's been a while since you've been here or you're just arriving for the first time, thanks for stopping by. But the Keys to Riches, for those of you who are not familiar, is a financial philosophy I created that teaches you how to think like the rich and be in control of your own money. It also gives you specific techniques to create or fix your credit, eliminate debt, save and invest, building wealth while transforming your current financial habits into healthy money management skills. We do this 1 week at a time, one key at a time at Keys to Riches, powered by Unlock Your Wealth Radio. And you can find us on this station's dial, anywhere on the internet or our local affiliates, as well as its own website, keys2riches.com. And if you stop by, please sign up for our video series on this because it used to be a paid series. You had to pay $360. It was $20 a month to participate. The way we used to have the Keys to Riches financial philosophy, and you worked at it all year. So instead of doing one key a month now, we're doing one key a week. And so you'll get to take the video course. And in 90 days, you can completely do a 180 with your personal finances if you apply these keys. So it's kind of like my gift to you. We also have new and improved information. Plus, we have our future series. So you get your feet wet with the keys to riches and become financially literate. And then you can move on to our financial fluency programs and our financial masteries, which are mega investment powerhouse investment programs. So please visit us at keys2riches.com for all of the Keys to Riches financial philosophy good stuff. And this week's key, which is acceptance and affirmation.
Moolah word.
Moolah word. There we go. Took me a second. So, moolah word. So, as we go through our Keys to Riches financial philosophy, our fourth key is knowledge is power, not knowing is powerful. And this gives you the strategy that we deploy to make money management successful. We incorporate that with all of our biology-based money management techniques, but essentially, that particular key has to do with this week's moolah word of the day. And because we use what we call our 3-5 financial strategy, where we ask 3 questions, and then we also address 5 areas of concern. So the 3 questions are, quick quiz.
Where
Yeah.
Where am I?
Where am I?
Where am I going?
Ding, ding.
And what's the difference?
You are a winner! Woo! Applause. The crowd goes wild. Okay,
Yes.
so let's see if we can match that. Want to go double or nothing with the 5 areas of concern?
Jeez. No.
No? Okay.
Definitely
We'll give you another year to learn those. So the 5 areas of concern that we must address, financially speaking, are income and expenses.
Right.
And then protections. Then we move into asset accumulation, asset multiplication, and then asset preservation. Ding, ding, ding! You got 1 out of 5. Way to go. Way to go. Yeah,
Well, that's the one that I work on the most.
well, there you go. Well,
That's
yes,
why.
because you're an old timer.
Right.
Actually, we all should be working on it. That's a misnomer, but I just like to poke fun at you
And I understand
because you're the oldest guy in the room.
Yeah, but I got the money. Now I gotta preserve it.
Yeah, so that's the key. But what we need to know is that we need to be setting aside for that. The sooner we start, the less we have to save for more money later on. If kids start sooner than you did, they don't have to contribute as much, and they can end up with more than you have. That's like the cool thing that we don't understand about money management. Nobody takes the time to explain it, and it's certainly not taught in our schools. But given that, there is a particular term that is today's moolah word of the day that has to do with when we answer that first question, which is, where am I? And so we do something called a balance sheet. That's where we figure out where we are. This is what we have, what we owe, and then what's the difference determines what our net worth is. At that particular moment when we do this where am I worksheet. And so a term, our moolah word of the day, is a phrase, and it's current assets. So this is a balance sheet item which equals the sum of cash and cash equivalents, like accounts receivables, inventory, marketable securities, prepaid expenses, and other assets that could be converted to cash in less than 1 year. So notice that real estate kind of didn't fit in there because it's a little bit, it's a tangible asset, but it's very tough to convert at around its value.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So marketable securities, prepaid expenses, accounts receivable, cash equivalents, inventory, and other assets that could be converted to cash in less than 1 year. A company's creditors will often be interested in how much that company has in current assets, since these assets can be easily liquidated in case the company goes bankrupt. In addition, current assets are important. Here's as we were talking about being articulate and enunciating properly earlier.
The mispronounced word of the day.
Yes, our mispronounced word, impotent. I lost my place now. In addition, current assets are important to most companies as a source of funds for day-to-day operations. And so because when money becomes personal and when we get to this quote personal finance, we screw everything up because of our biology-based tendencies. when it comes to money management. So that's why when we manage our personal finances, we need to think in terms of a business. So that's why I like to share all of these great business finance terms. So current assets is something that you need to be paying attention to. And in simple terms, this is the pile of money we need to grow. And the current liabilities is the pile we need to extinguish.
Shrink.
Make it virtually non-existent except for the stuff that is leveraging ourselves at a financial arbitrage that profits us. And what I mean by all of that sophisticated jargon is we borrow money on things that make us more money than it costs to pay. Like mortgages.
Yeah. Not
Ferragamos. Financing your Ferragamos is a no-no.
Yeah.
Those are the liabilities we need to ditch.
There's a book there, I think.
Yes, for sure.
Financing your Ferragamos.
There you go. Maybe that's what we should make the book title. Financing your Ferragamos and other personal finance eccentricities. So anyway, so that's it for our moolah word of the day. But I'm excited because we're going to have one of my Freedom Fest friends, my new friends, on today's episode. And that would be my new buddy from the Tax Revolution Institute. And that's Dan Johnson. He is the executive director. And he supports a tax revolution because no one should fear the IRS if they haven't done anything wrong. So Mr. Johnson started his first activist organization out of his dorm room at the tender age of 18.
Nice.
Over the next 2.5 years, he grew PANDA, which was People Against the NDAA, into the largest movement resisting a federal law at the local level in the United States. In the meantime, he wrote for over a dozen news sources, including the Huffington Post, Policy Mike, Occupy.com, Western Journalism, The Fifth Column, and others. Dan has been a featured speaker at over 100 events, appeared on numerous radio and television shows, and serves as president of the board of the Solutions Institute, an activist training center. As the executive director of the Tax Revolution Institute, he is dedicated to exposing incompetence and corruption at the Internal Revenue Service. And I think that his appearance here on today's show just reiterates the importance of what's going to happen this next electoral cycle. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Who we pick for the next president is going to have everything to do with whether the tax code stays the same, gets better, or gets worse.
Yeah.
And I can only think of one that's going to make it get better, and it's not the one that everybody else thinks it is. You know, because I think that right now, Republicans are just as sinful when it comes to taxes as the liberals are. I think that we really need a third party in there to really straighten things out. But that's just the Libertarian in me talking.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see what our guest has to say about that. So, Dan, welcome to Unlock Your Wealth Radio. We're so thrilled to have you a part of today's show.
I'm glad to be on.
So as we enter our final season for the year and we've got the upcoming elections close on our heels, we've got some important things to talk about, don't we?
I would say so.
So first off, let's introduce your organization to the audience. Now, as I mentioned in my intro, we met at Freedom Fest, and I think that that's the most amazing place to find awesome guests for the show. Tell us about what the Tax Revolution Institute does.
The Tax Revolution Institute is an organization with basically two goals. Number one, we want to replace the federal tax code with something that's going to bring freedom and prosperity for all Americans. And number two, we want to reform the IRS so no one fears the IRS if they're not doing anything wrong.
Oh, those are some ambitious goals.
We like to set the bar pretty high because if you don't set the bar pretty high, who knows what you'll get?
Well, yeah, clearly you've got some work ahead of you. I mean, how long is the tax code now? I mean, and they just keep piling on more lines of code, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, depending on who you ask, the tax code is either 7 or 70,000 pages long. And judges can't understand the tax code. Lawyers can't understand the tax code. Accountants can't understand the tax code. And we have a tax system by which, in order for the accountants even to be able to do their job, the IRS tells the accountants, we're not going to go after you if you mess something up. Even their own agents, if their own agents give you advice, the IRS says you can't count on that tax advice to file your returns correctly. So we essentially live in a country where neither the enforcers nor the citizens understand the tax law, and there's a lot of Americans who are absolutely enraged about federal tax reform and the fact that it hasn't gone anywhere. And the only thing that the current major party in Congress, the Republicans, have put forward is, we're just going to set the clock back to 1986. We're going to do a 1986 style tax reform. Well, last I checked, 1986 was a few years ago, and it didn't work because we're back in the exact same position we are now.
Yeah, like 30 years ago. Yeah, I mean,
right.
and I think with this upcoming election, I'm not confident with either of the candidates from the two-party system we're currently experiencing, although I think this will be an interesting election because we've got the Libertarian Party and the Green Party with, candidates that are actually drawing attention from the other two candidates. So, what would be the utopian tax code for you? If you could have it just the way you want it, what would that look like?
Well, we're not going to pretend to be an organization that's 8 months old and have a tax reform plan ready to go, considering the fact that there are organizations in Washington, D.C., top policy organizations, that have been coming out with tax reform plans for 40, 50, 60, 75 years and haven't come up with one that's been able to resonate with the American people. So we're focused primarily right now on studying taxes and studying tax reform. We have researchers dedicated to that. And we have principles, which are, we want the code to be absolutely simpler, want to replace the whole code instead of do all these little changes here and there that have been going on. And number 3, the code needs to be transparent. You need to know where your taxes, your specific tax dollars, are going and what they're funding. On those principles, we're doing research, but right now we're focused directly on the IRS. And I'm glad you brought up the elections, because what's interesting is there's actually, because of the Green Party and Libertarian Party, a good example with the Commander-in-Chief Forum that happened last night. The Libertarian Party candidate, Gary Johnson, was not invited to that forum, and the Libertarian Party sent a letter to the IAVA, which hosted the forum, saying that as a nonprofit organization, you have to be nonpartisan. Therefore, if you don't let our candidate in, essentially, it's probably a violation the IRS can come after you over. And so it kind of is helping to launch this IRS engagement in politics into the spotlight. And coincidentally, TRI's major campaign right now, which is we want to flat out get the IRS, get a bunch of accountants out of making political decisions that affect the lives of millions of Americans and thousands of organizations.
Well, as I'm thinking about this letter, and I'm a big Go Gary fan now, and I think that, can't the FCC go after these stations if they televise these things? Because I thought it was supposed to be equal time, or is that only in a two-party system? What happened to the equal time rule?
This kind of betrays the illegitimacy of a government controlling speech, any type of speech, whether it's political speech, whether it's hate speech, whether it's what have you, that when you give a government agency control over that speech, all someone has to do to rig that in their favor is get control of the government agency is supposed to be controlling the speech. Well, with a two-party system, the two parties have control over the government agencies that are supposed to be enforcing that law, and therefore use that to their benefit and make sure that only groups that follow the two-party system model, those are the groups that are protected, and the groups that don't aren't. And that's kind of the foolishness, in our opinion, of even giving, especially the IRS, but even the FEC, control over the political speech, which is kind of an oxymoron because you can't separate the two, but giving them control over any speech of any Americans whatsoever.
You are listening to Dan Johnson from the Tax Revolution Institute on Unlock Your Wealth Radio, and this segment of our show is sponsored in part by KeepMyID.org, the only service that actually prevents identity theft. All others are just monitoring services. Put your credit on lockdown for Unlock Your Wealth Radio listeners by visiting our website at unlockyourwealthradio.com/keepmyid and click on the link to start protecting your financial future right now. Remember to use promo code WAGS. So I want to circle back to a question I asked you before, Dan. And so if the tax code, if you're looking for complete reform, what's wrong with going with Steve Forbes and just junking it for like a 15% flat tax?
Well, the only problem with the flat tax and fair tax right now, one of the biggest problems, I shouldn't say the only, but one of the biggest problems with the flat tax and fair tax is the flat tax was introduced in 1987 by Alvin Rabushka and hasn't gone anywhere. The fair tax was introduced in the early 90s by the McNairs and hasn't gone anywhere. And so you have these two primary tax reform plans, which are supposed to be the basis of all tax reform in D.C., and millions of dollars have been thrown at them, but they haven't resonated with the American people. And so if you're going to do tax reform, you got to resonate with the American people. And in our opinion, you can't use the federal cheat code when you're talking about the tax code and tax reform. You can't just go straight to the federal level and try to change it. All politics is local. Anybody who has been in politics longer than a little bit knows that it's a fact. And because all politics is local, what organizations should be doing is they should be going to Austin. They should be going to New York City. They should be going to their hometown. They should be going to their state. Implement the tax reform they want in their state and in their county and in their city, and then see how that compares economically. See how that compares for jobs. See how that compares for people's lives and freedom and prosperity to the other counties, the other cities, the other states. You can't skip talking to the American people about tax reform, which is what the organizations in D.C. are doing. They're not going to the communities and talking to people, what kind of tax reform do you want, and implementing it, seeing how it works in the 50 laboratories of democracy we have. What they're doing is they're going straight to D.C. and saying, well, we sure hope the people like it. We're going to get this through. Well, the problem with that is in our society, the people still retain at least a small amount of control over their various congressional representatives. And so if you haven't gone to the people with your tax plan and said, here is how this will work, and tried to implement it on a local and state level first, you're not going to have any success at the federal level. And we can look at ever since 1986, and we don't even really consider 86 that good. You can look all throughout the past 75 years pretty much and see how that approach has failed.
All right. So if we're not into a flat income tax, what if we just abolished it altogether and did like a value-added tax? Because ideally, the rich buy bigger toys at higher price tags. So wouldn't they naturally pay more?
I would say so. And I would say, again, you've got to go to local communities and talk to them and convince them on this. We're developing the research necessary to do that at the moment. We're not focused on state and local or even federal tax reform right now. But the argument for why it hasn't worked is easier to make an argument for why it will. And the argument why it hasn't worked is you're shortcutting, educating people on why the new tax system will work. And quite frankly, that's why it hasn't gone anywhere in Washington.
So what would be a bulleted list of things that I would need to do first, second, and third if I want to be, and I'm in total agreement with you, and I say it all the time on this show, that all politics is local because your homeowners association is probably the most prohibitive laws you live with. So, and we have lots of those here in Arizona. I don't know how prevalent they are in on the East Coast, but we have them everywhere. And actually, sometimes you can get shot if you attend a meeting here in Arizona with some of our vocal and action-oriented members in homeowners associations. But so if I wanted to get started, what would be like the first 3 or 4 steps I would need to take in order to start creating tax reform at that local level?
Well, first you want to pick what your results should be. We recommend that the results of the tax reform should be a significantly more simple, significantly more transparent code, and that means cutting out a lot of special interests. So one area that people are working on a lot is subsidies, tax subsidies, given the special loophole given to a special company to come and produce a movie in the state or to come and give the citizens water or what have you. That's a great area to start because it cuts out special interest, makes the tax code simpler. Once you do that, then you need to get up to 3% of your community to back that and understand it. Once you hit that 3%, you've reached essentially an electoral tipping point, and you get that legislation introduced and passed at your city council, your county commission. And then after a few months, after about a year, you look back, compare it to other counties and cities, and you'll be able to see immediately the economic difference between what's happening to your voters in your county and what's happening to the voters in the other county.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a great start. So how long do these measures, once they get approved and implemented, how long before you can start seeing the results of that, where you can have actual data that you can take then to the next level of government officials as you kind of work your way up to creating enough of a movement that you can start affecting change on a state and then national level?
The factors you're going to be looking at, you're going to be looking at migration. So how many people are moving into the county and how many people are moving out of it. You're going to be looking at economic output of the county. So how much money is it producing? And you'll be looking at the number of jobs in the county. And you'll probably want to do your first analysis about a year out. Revolutions don't start and stop in a couple months. If they do, they really don't change anything. It takes some time. I believe the founders, it was about 10 years after the Declaration of Independence, or before the Declaration of Independence, they were preparing for it. So you're going to look at about a year of economic data when you're going to start to see a change. After about a couple years, 2 or 3 years, then you're going to have some really solid information to bring to the federal level. Remember that Texas implemented a consumption tax in 2009. That was later turned into the fair tax movement just a couple of years later. So it didn't take long for them to look at the information and then create a movement to start heading toward the federal level.
Gotcha. So that's good, though. So it's not like it's something that'll occur in our children's lifetime. It might actually happen in our lifetime. I mean, that's when you think about having to make monumental change and on that grand of a scale, that you would think that it would be decades or generations before you saw any manageable results, something that you could take away. So that's very encouraging for folks that want to get involved. So if folks are interested in learning more about being a part of the tax revolution and want to find out more about what you guys do at the Tax Revolution Institute, where can they find you?
Sure. Number one, if they're interested in getting the IRS out of politics, we have a coalition of organizations dedicated to doing that at firstaa.org, whichever way you spell it, first or 1ST, firstaa.org. That's our First Amendment Alliance. Secondly, if you want to help with the audit, the first ever independent audit of the IRS, you can go to auditirs.com. And our main organization's website is taxrevolution.us.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. It's been quite a learning experience. I wish we had more time to spend with you, but I'm glad that you were on. We'll have to have you on again as we get closer to the election, or maybe we can start talking about some of the policies that get changed or repealed or implemented after our new president is here.
Absolutely.
And for those of you...
They're probably all going to be terrible, but absolutely.
Well, but then we can discuss what the greater ramifications of that are, so people can, with that information, armed with that information, they can make better decisions about their own microeconomic standing, meaning their personal financial interests. So it'll help them to plan for that a little bit more effectively. You have been listening to Dan Johnson on Unlock Your Wealth Radio. And for more great resources, just visit visit Dan's show page if you're driving around without a pencil. Never fear, unlockyourwealthradio.com is here where you can visit Dan's show page and get the links to all of the different opportunities that you have to get involved with the Tax Revolution Institute. And for Unlock Your Wealth Radio and the maestro of Moolah, Michael Terry, I'm Heather Wagenhals. Now go out and unlock your wealth today.
UnlockYourWealthRadio.com is produced by Heather Wagenhals and the Unlock Your Wealth Foundation. UnlockYourWealthRadio.com and its affiliates are copyrighted 2016 with all rights reserved. For more information on the Keys to Riches Financial Wellness Series, please visit our website at www.unlockyourwealth.com.